Welcome to another episode of Data Gurus. This is Sima Vasa, your host. I'm really excited to welcome my guest, David Allison, who is the CEO and founder of the Valuegraphics Research Company. Welcome, David.
Hi, thanks for having me over.
How are you doing? Listen, you
I'm doing
do
great.
more than just obviously have your company. You're a public speaker. You write books. So I don't want to underestimate all the work that you do by just mentioning the research company. But yeah, it would be great just to share a little bit of your background and your path to this point.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I was born the son of four sharecropper. No, I I how did I get here? Well, I went to school. Do you remember there was a TV show for a while called 30 something?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it was these like two really cool guys who worked in an ad agency. And
Yes.
so that was very influential. And I was like, I want to go work in an ad agency because it looks like you get to stay up all night and eat pizza and like come
Yeah.
up with cool ideas.
Be
And
creative. Yeah.
Yeah. So I went to school to learn how to do that, and, the path that I was that was available to me as I went to journalism. Graduated from school, came back to got into the working world, started working in ad agencies, and eventually, ran away screaming, like my hair on fire, and, decided that was a whole lot of stress and anxiety and that my temperament didn't match that. And so I thought the answer to that, the best way forward was to actually start my own, because then that couldn't be any stress or anxiety involved in that.
Zero.
Uh, and then fast forward through that, learning curve and, 10 years of having my own place, and, sold that to management and, started to think about one of the biggest problems we'd encountered in that journey, which was understanding target audiences
Yep.
and what made people do things, and looking at the tools we had to try and figure that out and getting a little frustrated, and so it kinda led me to where I am today.
That's so cool. And talk I mean, your latest book, it w
Latest book's called, it's very dramatic, it's called The Death of Demographics,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
which,
I'm actually in the middle of it, and I really it resonates a lot in terms of having people be connected on values versus a specific age group. Because I look at my cohorts and I'm like, "Hey, I don't think like that. That's not where I'm thinking. I'm thinking about something else, or I feel
Mhm.
in a different way than what you're saying." But talk a little bit about the death of demographics, and obviously it goes right into what you've developed, which is the value graphics database.
Yeah, so, it came from this frustration of continually spending our clients' money, to try and target a group of people and get them to do something we wanted them to do. And then, I was most of the work my firm did was, real estate development.
Right.
So what was nice about that sector is that there's sort of a beginning and a middle and an end.
Yes.
Unlike brand advertising, it just keeps going forever and ever and ever, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so we had this constant experimentation where we would understand a group of people, we'd do something, and then we could see who responded, and then we could do it again, and then we got to do it again. And every single time we did this, the same thing happened. I
Yeah.
would end up in this room full of people at a ribbon cutting ceremony for the new condo they had just bought or the office tower they were moving into. And I'd look around the room and go, who the heck are all you people? Like, you don't match the target audience description we just spent $1 million on.
Right.
Some of you do, few, 10,
Yes.
15%, like, sure. But the rest of you, like, what the heck are you doing here? We didn't talk to you. We didn't buy in your channels. You
Yeah.
weren't on our radar. Uh, and so when I sold the company, I thought that's kind of inefficient if we're spending all this time and money and we're only actually getting a small percentage of the folks so accidentally all these other people are coming and it's
Right.
the vast majority. So what's going on there?
Mm.
So started to do a little bit of reading, had some time on my hands and looked into behavioral science because basically it's like, how do people decide to do a thing? It's all about behavior.
Right.
And I found a really interesting nugget that kind of stretches across all the subfields there, psychiatry and sociology and
Um,
psychology and neurology even. Even the neurologists are on board with this little thread, which is that the only way people know how to make any decision about anything, the only way our brains operate when it comes to making a decision is which option is aligned with my values. Now, you don't even know you're doing it. It's like a split-second thing in the back of your head in the grocery
subconscious
store,
thing. Right.
deciding between 2 cans of soup, but
Right.
the only way human brains know how to decide anything is this one is aligned with my values and this one isn't.
Correct. Okay.
So it seemed like the secret that we needed to try and uncover was, how do you understand what people's values are
Huh?
for a whole group of folks before you spend a dollar trying to convince them to do a thing.
Right.
There wasn't a way to do that, so that's what we built. Um, we've now done wow, I can talk about this for hours, but we've done 1 million surveys around the world, long form qualitative surveys, taken the responses from those folks, which are, by the way, I know we're talking to data people today, so I can get into the geekiness here. So it's 1 million long form qual surveys in 152 languages in a random stratified, statistically representative sample across 180 countries. Which in and of itself, just collecting a random stat rep around 180 countries, right?
Yes. Yes.
We've maintained a plus or minus 3.5% level of accuracy, 95% level of confidence throughout this whole process. And what we've done is ask people about what they do. Because if you ask people about their values, they'll just straight up lie.
Right.
But values drive behavior. So if you map behaviors for this many people with the amount of specificity and nuance that we've asked questions around,
Right.
and you start to see patterns in the noise. You say, okay, these people are doing these things, and what's driving these people are this, and what's driving these people in this situation are this. And so when we looked at all that data, we were able to see that there's 56 values that are driving us all to do all the things we do all around the world. So those
Incredible.
are the 56 values of the Valuegraphics database.
That's incredible. I just wanna back up for a second here. First of all, the interviews, I believe you said were about 45 minutes apiece, is that right? When you did the long
They weren't interviews, they're surveys,
surveys, yeah, okay, so
long
long
form
form,
qualitative surveys that
okay,
went out. There were 10 waves of
yes,
those surveys around 10 sort of thematic clusters. Um, and then, the way we sent them out into the world is through social media because social media is, if nothing else, it's the most complicated and accurate targeting mechanism that the human species has ever come up with. So to build this random stat rep, we knew we needed a certain percentage for Germany
right,
of women between this age and this age.
yep,
And as soon as we got enough, we could just turn off the taps on those ones. And,
sure,
but we were short on men between this age and this age in Southern Alabama. So we could turn up the volume on that and get more people to come into the sample.
got it,
So by doing that globally,
yeah,
and using a wide variety of social media channels that gave us the ability to target folks, yeah, 1 million people filled out these surveys and told us all kinds of things about their behaviors, which we were able to then extrapolate and turn back into quant. So we talk about it as a
got it, okay.
qual database. So we started with qual, made it into quant so we could slice and dice, but then as
Yes,
we pull things out, we can go back into
and
qual
test,
now and go,
yes,
okay, here's what it means to these people. And
right,
here's like all this other contextualizing information that they volunteered to tell us about. Because you're asking people about what do they do, and they say things like, well, my favorite sports team is blah blah. And we're like, oh, favorite sports team, let's put that in a
right,
bucket. And then on the weekends, I like to play tennis. We're like, "Ok oh, okay, tennis, let's put that in a bucket."
yep,
So, we've now got all this contextualizing information around people in a random stat rep around the world about their
yep,
behaviors tied to what's triggering those behaviors, which is their values.
their values, and you came up with 52 universal values,
56,
56,
56.
apologies, uh,
That's okay.
give it
So
first of all, how do you define a value?
good question. It's funny you asked that. I can tell you've been around this research
Yeah.
park once or twice before, because most of the time I get into these conversations and we're half an hour in and we realize that we're actually talking about two entirely
Yeah,
different things.
yeah.
So, uh, a value, and I think pretty much the entire sociological ecosystem would agree with this definition. A value is something that is so inherently part of your DNA
Yeah,
that every decision you make all day long is filtered through this value. So it's important to note that we also and there's some debate about this, but it's not very um, it the people who disagree are wrong. They can debate all they want, but they're wrong. That you don't your values are fixed.
yeah,
Like you get your values when you're young
yes,
and they're with you for the rest of your life. And how you behave throughout your lifetime is always rooted in those values. And there's some confusion there because people say, well, my values changed when I got older. I'm not a crazy college kid smoking dope on the weekend and
right,
having a good time. And now I'm a family man and I've got kids and responsibilities. Cool. Those are just behaviors that have changed. They're
yeah,
beliefs that have changed. They're attitudes that have changed. But I mean, to use that example,
Yeah.
that new family man who's saying, "I am not the person I was before," would never have become a family man if there wasn't some value that was driving him in that direction to
Right.
decide he wanted to have a family.
Yeah.
It's just truth. Our values are forever, just like diamonds, right? Our values are forever. Uh, so
That's a good commercial.
yeah. So so once you've mapped and measured the values for a group of people or an individual for that matter,
Mm.
um, that's gonna be how they operate. It's like their internal operating system for every decision they make in their life and
Either
every
conscious
belief
or
they have in it,
subconscious.
conscious or subconscious. I
Yeah.
mean, I made an offhand comment there a minute ago about the grocery store, but literally, if you're standing in the grocery store and you got 2 cans of soup in your
Yep.
hand, something, is gonna make you say, "This one," and that's
Yep.
the one that goes in the grocery cart. And what that something is a neurological trigger that says, "This one aligns with my values. Choose that one, and you're gonna get a dopamine reward."
Got it.
And so, that's the one you choose, even if you have to pay a little bit more for it.
Yeah.
I mean, think about your if environmentalism is one of your values, and that one is a little bit more money, but it says very clearly on there that it was, it's ethically harvested and there's
Course.
no
Yep.
rainforest damage. And of course, you're going to pay an extra
Yep.
buck for that can of soup without even thinking about it. It just
Right.
happens because it
Yes.
feels like who you are. Another place that happens all the time. Uh, we're doing this podcast recording in the morning, so you're getting like really chatty, caffeinated
Awesome.
David.
I love it.
Uh, is cars.
Okay.
Years and years ago when I worked in ad agencies, one of my clients was General Motors.
Okay.
And I used to spend a lot of time on car dealership floors talking to the sales guys. And one of them said to me once, I can tell within 5 seconds of somebody sitting in the driver's seat in the showroom whether or not they're going to buy that car. I said, well,
How?
how?
Yeah.
He said, well, you can just see them settle in and go,
Yeah.
yeah, this is me.
Yes.
And then they start asking questions about drivetrain and warranty and all that stuff to back up their decision, but they've
Right.
already decided.
Yeah.
And what we're witnessing there is somebody going, "This one feels right. This is a no-brainer.
Well,
This one's an obvious yes." And what that is it just aligns with their values. This is how I believe myself to be in the world.
need
So
to be
this is the
here.
one for
Yeah.
me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredibly fascinating. I mean, I do think that the salespeople at car dealerships are quite astute because they know exactly who to focus on, which for whatever reason, they know who has the highest propensity to purchase a car within a short time frame. I don't know how they know how to do it, but they do it really well, at least from my experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's quite an eco I mean, we could talk about cars and car salesmen and car dealerships for a while one
Yeah.
day, but it's an interesting little, subculture.
So tell me, I think companies like demographics for targeting, it's easy. You can buy advertising based on demographics, geography, ethnicity. Uh, Values-based targeting is harder, right? It's not as cookie cutter in terms of, where do I buy my media? How do I spend my ad dollars? So how does the value graphics database or your approach help marketers get or your clients or associations connect better with the population they're trying to get to that's not demographically driven?
Right. Well, here's a stat to start with.
Okay.
Around the world, million people in our data set,
Yep.
hundreds of millions of data points,
Yep.
we can look at things by demographics and say,
Okay.
"Okay, so let's look at a demographic
Yeah.
category. Let's look at, everybody's favorite thing to launch research reports
Yep.
around right now, Gen Z."
Yes.
So Gen Z are roughly 10.5% similar to each other.
That's it.
There's a cohesion in that
Yeah.
cohort of
Yeah.
about 10.5%,
Okay.
and that's an average number across any demographic cohort anywhere in the world.
Got
They
it.
vary a little bit from one place to the next and one
Right.
cohort to the other, but on average, it's 10.5% cohesion inside any demographic cohort, which means that if you're spending money against a demographic, you have a baked in fail rate of 90%,
Yeah.
rounding off.
Yeah.
And that explains why when we do direct marketing and we get like a 3 or 4% response rate, we think we hit the freaking jackpot
Right. Yeah.
because the best you could possibly hope for if you were perfect is 10%.
Yes.
So
Yes.
3 or 4% is like, wow, that's amazing
Right.
because we're using stereotypes
Yeah.
about what these demographic categories and cohorts are all about. And when you just stop and think about that for a moment, just think
Mm.
about, let's stick with Gen Z. It's roughly 25% of the population of of the United States right now are
Yep.
Gen Z. And you're trying to tell me they're all the same on any level?
Yes.
It's 25% of the entire population. You
Yeah.
know, the Gen Z single mom who's on a farm in Idaho and the Gen Z white collar
Mhm.
bro who's in finance on Wall Street,
Right.
they're the same? Like, really?
Yeah.
It just makes no sense, and yet we sit around and go, "Oh, yeah, we're targeting Gen Z,
Yeah.
and so that means we need to say these things, and we need to talk about it this way."
It's
It
very
just
interesting. Yeah, and there's a lot of stereotypes that then play in and feed kind of the notion of, let's say, for this matter, Gen Zs and what they're about, right? And
yeah.
yeah.
And our society and the way we approach marketing and sales is it's rife with this stuff. Like, if
Yes.
you found out that your target audience was 73% female,
Mhm.
what are you gonna do? You're gonna start thinking about, "What do women like?"
Right.
As if they're all the same as
Correct.
each other. And inevitably, you're gonna end up with pink packaging,
Yes.
and it's gonna have cursive script on it,
Mhm.
and there'll be a, I don't know, a ridiculous promotion with a romance novelist or something. I mean, it's just like you chocolate, right?
Yes.
It's just like the stereotypes just start to flow
Yeah.
because we don't have any other way to think about people. You can go in to look at psychographics, so
Mhm.
that can be useful. That's a step up because that's showing you some kind of repeat behavior from, but the problem is it's all from the past, right?
Right.
Because it's not predictive. It's information about what they've already done or bought or believed or felt or thought or whatever. And what we're all trying to do is get somebody to do something different next.
Yeah.
So using data from the past, no matter how strong or recent it is, and stereotypes about demographic clusters,
Mhm.
neither one of those things is really driving us forward. But I'm not answering your question. Your question is, how does it help marketers with their targeting? Well, to this point, I have yet to convince major media outlets to sell value graphic segments to their advertisers. But what you can do is make some leaps of faith. You can say, well, people who are watching this particular program are going to have all kinds of different demographics, but they're all there for some kind of shared set of values.
Right.
Something about that show or this podcast or this digital platform is attracting people, and it won't be a demographic reason.
Mhm.
So you got to try and connect the dots between that and your thing.
Mhm.
So you're a brand, your company, whatever, and you're saying, okay, well, what we're selling is outdoor hiking equipment that people really actually just wear in the city. They don't, so like
Yeah.
Arc'teryx, Patagonia, like whatever. And then you see some properties out there that are about, adventure or about doing things that you never thought you'd be able to do, or you can kind of make those sorts of logic leaps and say, that's a better way to be thinking about connecting the dots here than just saying, I'm looking for 18, 24-year-old men
Yep.
or whatever those numbers might be. Now, the best way to do it, of course, here we go, hire my company,
Yeah.
because we can profile for you what are the values of the people who are fans of your brand,
Mhm.
and then figure out for which properties are those same values prevalent.
Got it.
And then we can use values to connect those dots for you. It's not automated yet.
Yes.
However, Amazon just had me come out and speak at a big thing at the Cannes Golden Lions in the south of France, and they had me talking to all the major advertisers
Mhm.
from all the big brands that advertise on all the different Amazon platforms. And the point of the conversation was to say, demographics aren't cutting it anymore.
Yeah.
Uh, Stop using their suggestions were, and the research they had me there talking about, and some other research they'd commissioned was about how generational profiling is nonsense.
Mhm.
So when Amazon's starting to pay attention to the fact that
That's
generational profiling
amazing.
is
Yeah.
nonsense,
Yes.
there's a clue for us all that
Right.
we need to be thinking about people in a different way.
Yes.
And my my belief is, if the point of what we're doing is trying to figure out how to get people to do something,
Right.
doesn't it make sense to look at them based on what it takes to get them to do something?
Yes.
And what it takes to get anybody to do anything is their values.
Mhm.
Values trigger all our behavior. So why wouldn't we start looking at people based on who they are on the inside and what their values are? Because that's what we're all trying to figure out. The point of demographic segmentation or psychographic segmentation or any kind of segmentation is this group I need to treat differently than this group in order to get them to do what I want them to do. But what we're missing in all of those segmentation models is what are the buttons you got to push to get them to say yes? And
Yeah.
that's their values. So you got to layer the values in there.
That's an amazing speaking gig, and I also know they only invited one other speaker there, right? When you were there, I'm so fascinated by it, and just a small aside, how this person introduced himself. Can you just share that a little bit? Because it's a fun story.
Yeah. So the other speaker they had at this thing was Roger Federer,
Mm.
and so first off, I got to say I'm not a huge tennis
Yeah, yeah,
fan,
yeah.
but boy, I'm sure a Roger Federer fan now that I spent a little time talking to him because he's an amazing, charming,
Yeah,
low key, totally chill
so
guy,
cool.
and he was just really kind.
Yeah.
He was a really kind man, and yeah, he told some great stories. Which, I'll leave him to tell those stories, but I'll tell you one thing that I saw about him afterwards
Yeah.
that made me go, "This is a good dude."
Right.
Uh, it was a press conference from, like, 10 years ago,
Mhm.
and he's sitting behind they do those
Yeah, yeah,
sports press
yep,
conferences where you're behind the table and the press is
all
all
this
out there,
in front of you, yeah.
and this young kid, maybe 8 years old,
Mhm.
stands up and they hand him the microphone, and they thought he was gonna say something cute, and he says, "You have to promise me, Mr. Federer, that you will continue to play for at least another 10 years so that I can play against you when I'm
Wow.
18." And Roger says, "Absolutely." Fast forward 10 years later, the
Was
kid's
it?
become a pretty good tennis
Yeah.
player, and they filmed him competing in a match, and then in the middle of a game, someone comes and taps him on the shoulder and says, "Come with me." And he's like, "What? What's
Right.
going on?" He says, "Just come with me." So he's like, and he comes around, turns around the corner, goes into this court, and Roger Federer is standing there
Wow.
waiting to play with him.
That's
So
cool.
he lived up to his
That's
promise.
amazing.
He
Yeah.
did it.
Yeah.
I was like, "Okay, you
Good
know,
guy. Yeah.
good man,
Good man.
definitely a good man, good values." He's
Yes.
got a good set of values,
Yeah.
that guy.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, and actually what I would love to, have you share some other examples of how Value Graphics has helped, um, clients or associations. I know you shared with me a couple examples, but just to make it come alive in terms of a specific client problem that you helped, solve with your approach.
One of my favorite stories is about, a speaking engagement, and all my
Okay.
speaking engagements, we use the Valuegraphics Research Company to
Yeah.
find out something that is, gonna be useful to the
Mhm.
people I'm speaking to. So whoever it is they're trying to inspire,
Yeah.
I come with data and say, "Here's what you gotta say," and get those folks to pay attention and be inspired. So they asked me to come to this one particular, conference, and it was, in Florida, and it was for companies that own people who own companies that employ the blue collar
Yep.
trades. So carpenters, electricians, drywallers, HVAC,
Plumbers.
all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And the reason they wanted me to come and speak was that they're having a hard time to getting people into the blue collar trades.
Right.
It's a tough sell. Talent shortage.
Yep.
It's not unique to them. Many sectors are having problems with talent these days. So we did a little profile on people using the Valuegraphics Research Company of people who are considering a career in the blue collar trades, but had yet to jump the fence and go and sign up for an apprenticeship program, and got up on stage and shared a bunch of stuff. But one thing I shared was this one value we found that they over index on compared to the general population enormously. I've never seen such a big delta.
Wow.
Huge difference between the general population and people who are considering a career in the blue collar trades around one value that we refer to as service to others.
Okay.
They wanna feel like they're in a helping profession.
Yes.
They wanna feel like they're making a difference in people's lives. So I get up on stage and say, "Listen, my friends, you're saying all the smart things. You're telling them they'll make more money and that they can get out of shift work and they won't have to be in the bars and the restaurants anymore and they don't have to work weekends and maybe they can settle down. It's a portable skill, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera."
Yeah.
But what you're not saying is that this is your chance to make a difference in
Yes.
someone's life. This is your chance to be in a helping profession. So I get down off stage, and this guy comes over to me and he says, "I want you to know that I have 7 offices in 7 cities across the Southern United States. And in each one, there's a fleet of vans that go out on service calls every day. And in each fleet of vans, one is painted pink because all the money from the pink van every day goes to fund breast cancer research because my wife had a story about why
Things
they
now. Yeah.
chose breast cancer. And I lit up like a Christmas tree. I
Yeah.
was like, "That's fantastic. Look, you found it. You didn't need to come to my keynote today." And he said, "David, that's not the story. The story is that in every one of those offices every day, my guys fight over who gets to be in the pink
Oh,
van.
that's incredible. They wanna help
So
others.
they want to help.
Yeah.
They want to,
Yeah.
and it's important to them to
Yeah.
know that their work that day is going to help breast cancer research." So the end of that story is, if we'd sat down as marketers or as anybody,
Yeah.
and we're trying to understand how do we motivate and engage and inspire people who are considering a career in the blue collar trades, would we have ever got to pink vans?
Right.
Never, 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 never.
Correct.
We'd be
Yeah.
talking about backwards baseball caps and chew and
Yeah.
tailgating parties and like all the stereotypes
Yes.
about the demographic, but it's pink vans.
Yeah.
When you understand who people are on the inside, you start to see what matters most to them. And once you know what matters most to people in any situation, you can turn whatever it is you want them to do into a no-brainer.
It's
You
amazing.
just connect the dots
Yeah.
between what matters most and what you'd like them to do. And they're like, "Well, why would I? Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Of
Well,
course I'm gonna do this.
and
Absolutely."
what I love of how you do it, and correct me if I'm wrong, here in terms of the approach, but you have a typing tool that allows you to quickly interview or survey a population of people, like in this example, potentially going into a blue collar trade, and you can
Yeah,
connect that to all the data, that you have in the database based on the segments that come out, or the values that come out as strong, which is
you
such
got it.
a great way to kind of um, make that database alive and keep it going in terms of different application. I mean, we talked about using it for employee engagement.
Employee engagement, sales, marketing,
Yes.
public opinion, change management, innovation, disruption, it doesn't matter. All of that stuff,
Yeah.
it's really about convincing some people to do something.
Yeah.
And the only way to convince anybody to do anything is to understand what matters most to them and make it about that. And then when you do that, it becomes a no-brainer for
Yeah.
them. They're like, "Yeah, of course I'm gonna do that thing." But yeah, the way we do this is for any group of people you can describe with a sentence or 2.
Mhm.
um, we go out and do a piece of primary research. We call it an unlocking survey.
Okay.
We talk to 1,500,
Mhm.
1,800, 2,200 people, something like that. We put them through rigorous validity checks to make sure they're not just mucking with us.
Right.
And they match the description of whoever it is you want to have. So it can be, and we've done some crazy things, but it can be, I'll just be silly to make a point. It could be, women who've dyed their hair in the last month, who drive a late model Ford
Right.
pickup truck and live in the southern United States. Well, we can go find that group of people. We ask them a handful of questions,
Mm.
about 6 or 7 questions, and those questions are set,
Yeah.
because the way they answer those questions and the way they answer those questions tells us what data to look at in the benchmark database with all those hundreds of millions of data
Yeah.
points swimming around in there. And so we can pull out all this stuff and say, "Okay, for people just like that,
Yeah.
here's what you need to know. Here's the response. Here's the dashboard that shows you everything you need to know about those folks." And once you know what matters most to them, once you know what their values are, you can then use that information for those people in any situation to show them why whatever it is you want them to do is an absolute easy yes and a complete no-brainer. It's
Yep.
like you just match their values.
I'd
And
imagine a lot of clients have, like, aha moments when they see the results in term
there's there's a lot of aha. Um, there's a lot of validation.
Yeah.
I was just on a webinar yesterday with people who run large franchise brands. And they're like, "Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
we see that all the time.
Yeah.
Now it's got data behind
Yeah.
it, though. That means we don't have to worry about these other things over here that
Awesome.
we think are, but
Yeah.
now those are the buttons to push." But yeah, we see that.
Yeah.
The other thing that happens sometimes is like, I won't give you examples, but sort of the pink van moment where people are like, "No way. That's what's going on. Oh, that makes total sense now that you point it out." But wow, that's crazy. So there's oftentimes these sort of surprising, like, "Wow,
Yeah.
really?" It's like, "No, okay, I get it. I see how that works." So yeah, it's validating. It can be surprising. The other thing that we find that happens over and over is clients come to us and they're pretty determined. They have a demographic profile for who it is they're trying to understand, and values don't understand demographics.
Mhm.
So they come to us and say, these are the parameters. We want to understand people who fit in this box, age, income, gender, whatever it might
Right.
be. And we go, well, maybe we should just go and see who's interested in your product, and maybe you'll
Find out.
end up
Yeah.
having a bigger. No, no, we want this box. This is who we're focused on. It says so in our, consumer profiles that the CEO signed off on last week. It's like, okay, cool, we'll go do that.
Yeah.
But inevitably, we come back and say, okay, here's what you need to know about these folks. And by the way, it also works for all these other people on either side of that definition. So if you want to just ignore them, cool. But you should know that they're also potentially big fans of whatever it is you're doing.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good way to bridge it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. We talk about it as a loaf of bread sometimes,
Yeah.
and that we've for centuries now, and whenever we think about our audiences, we pick the slices. We go, man, white collar,
Yes.
$250,000 a year,
Yep.
baby boomers, married, and say that's our target
Right.
audience. That's what we're interested in. But if you slice the bread this way, and
Mm.
you'll find that there's a set of values that are triggering behavior around your brand that goes all the way across all those
Yeah.
demographics, and you actually may end up having a baguette
Yes.
because you'll find you have a much larger target audience than you thought. Because guess what? Not all men who are 18 to 24 and have a white collar job are going to be your target audience.
Right.
Some small portion of them,
Right.
but that same small portion will be true for all the other slices of bread. So why would you want to ignore those?
Very cool. All right.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, I want to ask you.
Wrap up. We're just getting
I'm
started here, my
sorry.
friend. What's going on?
Well, I know you and I could talk about this for a long time. Um, what are some of the surprises that you saw in aggregate as it relates to the database? Like, what was I'm sure there's many, but what comes to the top of the list in terms of
Mm.
what you've looked at over the years?
Well, it's we've learned so many things that are just like aha moments for us as human
Mhm.
beings walking around the world, right? So here's one. When you get off an airplane in a different country
Yeah.
and it just immediately, without even listening to the language or whatever, you just know you're somewhere else.
Yes.
It just doesn't feel at home.
Yeah.
What you're feeling there is a different set of values at play. The way people stand, the way they talk, the way
Yeah.
what they're wearing, the whole everything about it has been based on a different set of decisions, and decisions are based on our values.
Right.
So even Canada and the US, I'm
Yeah.
up here in Vancouver, and so, I come down to the States for work all the time. I get off the plane and wherever I am in the US, I'm like, yeah, this is I'm not in
Yes.
Vancouver anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not in Kansas anymore, Dorothy. And here's one reason why. Here's a fun little story.
Okay.
In Canada, the number one most important value is family, followed by belonging.
Nice.
In the United States, the number one most important value is belonging, followed by family.
That's interesting.
So when we sit up here and watch some of the stuff that's been going on with this divisiveness that's in the
Yes.
United States right now, and where Uncle Bob and Aunt Sally aren't invited to Thanksgiving dinner
Correct.
this
Yeah.
year because they're on Team Red and we're
Right.
all Team Blue,
Yeah.
we're like, wow, that's crazy. But in the States, belonging is more important than
Fire.
family.
Interesting.
Whereas here, we have our political
Right.
divides and we have our Uncle Bobs and Aunt Sallies,
Yes.
but they still get invited to dinner. We just all say to each other, don't talk about
Right.
politics.
Right.
Uncle Bob and Aunt Sally are coming.
Yeah.
So
That's
even just in that
interesting.
one simple little
Yeah.
flip,
Flip.
you can feel the difference.
Mhm.
I look at sports. I mean, just to reinforce this
Yeah.
the sports fanaticism in the United States is far more intense
Yeah.
than it is in Canada. We have our fanatics for our hockey teams, but the whole sports
Yeah.
culture in the US is so strong because I feel like I belong to my team.
Right. That explains a
Uh,
lot.
well, and then back to politics. I
Yeah.
mean, in Canada, we call a federal election and 6 weeks later it's over. In the United States, it's a 4-year process
Yes.
to have elected the next president, and then you start the next day working on the next one.
Next
And
one. Yeah.
there's stats and updates and
Right.
team and who's ahead and who's behind and what's
So
going
true.
on. And it's just this you've made it into a sport.
It's a sport. Yeah.
You've made it into a
Yeah.
belongingness thing. You have
Yeah.
teams. Uh,
And
So
there's
yeah,
such
just
advocacy for the team that a person's on. Like, it consumes people in terms of, making sure that they belong in a specific group. That's interesting.
well, and it gives you
Identity, maybe?
belonging is an interesting value because if you take into extremes like this is,
Yeah.
it gives you the ability to abdicate responsibility for so much of your life. Because once you've decided what team you're on, you know how you're supposed to think and what you're
Yeah,
supposed to lead and where your kids are
interesting.
supposed to go to school and how
Right.
you're supposed to vote and to be part of that
Yeah.
team. It's like these are the
Yeah.
way people like us are.
Yes. Yeah.
And you can take on that identity,
Mhm.
and it becomes easy
Yeah.
because you just are it's all very prescribed
Yeah.
for you. This is what you do. Now, I don't mean that to I mean, I'm speaking in a very sociological
I
way here.
understand.
I don't mean that to be pejorative
Sure.
in any way, and everybody's still very much a unique individual in the United States, but far more so than in Canada, there is this sense of belongingness
Mhm.
that overrules everything else.
Yeah.
It's the number one most important value.
You know what's so interesting to me? And, when I think about ethnicity, like culture, tradition, like where people's history and orientation has come from, and now, first generation or second generation immigrants in the US, and thinking about which groups chose to belong to which parties. It's so interesting because so much of culture that I like, so from my perspective, being Indian or Persian or like, family is such a big value, right? And then how does that then get mixed with the current culture in the US? This is another episode, but
It is another
but
episode.
it's so
Yeah,
interesting to me, right? Because you have that history and migration of these values that come from, you know, lots of years.
yeah,
And then all of a sudden you have interracial marriages and you have different groups of ethnicities that might align to different groups that you sit back and say, "Wow, I'm really surprised by that."
yeah.
Um, but yeah,
It is very surprising. It's why after every election, in Canada and the United
yeah,
States, pretty much everywhere in the world, everybody sits back and go, "Wow, those pollsters, they were
right,
sure on." Well, guess what? They're looking at demographic
right,
groups, and
yes,
demographic groups have only got 10.5% commonality,
yeah,
similarity, cohesion, right?
yeah,
So, why did all those young men vote
right,
this way and not that
yes,
way? Well, because you were looking at it the
yeah,
wrong ways. You were slicing the pie in the wrong
yeah,
slicing the loaf of bread in the wrong direction.
right,
But
exactly.
I know you're trying to wrap up here, but I do wanna tell one last
Yeah,
story if I've
please
got time
go
for
ahead.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
'Cause it's really important, I think, that we understand why this is important.
yes,
It's far more effective to look at people based on, how they're gonna make decisions, who they are on the inside instead of
yes,
what we can see on the outside.
yes,
And I think we can all agree
yeah,
that, it feels better too. I mean, you takes you away from demographic stereotypes. It's 8 times more effective. We can go into the math around that in another episode one day. So it's 8 times more effective, and it feels better because we're abandoning these demographic
mhm,
stereotypes. But let's think about that for a second. Why is it important to abandon demographic stereotypes? Because they're wrong,
yeah,
they're inefficient, they're ineffective, they can be harmful and hurtful.
yes,
All women are like this, all
yes,
gay men are like that,
correct,
whatever.
yeah,
But those stereotypes, by perpetuating their use, we are innocently perpetuating things that they prop up, which is
right,
ageism and sexism and racism and homophobia and ableism and classism and da 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 da.
so
Da.
true.
It's so much more effective for us to forget about all of that, all those stereotypes, and just start figuring out really what matters
What
most to
yeah.
people.
Yeah, and how do you connect with others, right? Based
How do
on
you connect?
a common
You and I would
shared values.
very unlikely you and I would end up in the same target audience because of what we look like and
Right,
who we are demographically, but on the inside,
yeah,
we could be twin sisters,
yes. Yeah,
and that would be totally missed,
yeah, yeah,
unless we knew what our values were and we could
interesting.
find out how we were aligned around that. So, that's the mission that we're on. My speaking work is all about helping people look through a values-driven lens. Our work as a research company, the books, the online work, the social media, everything. It's about just trying to get more and more people to realize that it's a far better, more effective, and more efficient, and better for the world
Yeah,
to change the way we think about each
Yeah,
other.
I love it. It's a common good for humanity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining me today, David. I really appreciate it. I love our conversations. Really appreciate it.
Me too.
All right.
Thanks for
Take
having
care.
me over.